The first time my daughter looked me in the eyes and asked why I had been so cruel to her, I thought she had confused me with someone else. We were standing in my kitchen, less than 6 feet apart, but it felt like there was an entire year between us. Tessa's hands were shaking. Her voice wasn't. "You told me I was exhausting, Dad." I stared at her. "What?" "You told me every crisis in my life became everyone else's problem. You told me you were tired of rescuing me." My stomach tightened. I had never said those things. Not once. Then she placed her phone on the counter and turned the screen toward me. There was my name. My photograph. Messages stretching back almost 11 months. And every one of them had supposedly come from me. I read the first few lines and felt the room change around me. They sounded close enough to the way I spoke that someone who loved me might believe them. But colder. Sharper. Crueler. Then I saw the date on one message. It had been sent on a night when I had been sitting beside my wife, Elise, asking why our daughter wouldn't answer my calls. That was the moment I realized something far worse than an argument had happened inside my family. Someone hadn't simply lied about me. Someone had spent almost a year teaching my daughter to remember me as a different man. And when Tessa finally told me who had encouraged her to stop speaking to me, I understood that the fake messages weren't the secret. They were the wall built around it. Tessa and I had never been the kind of father and daughter who needed a reason to talk. She could call me while standing in a grocery store because she couldn't remember which brand of coffee I used to buy. I could send her a picture of a crooked shelf I had installed and wait for her to make fun of me. When she moved 40 minutes away for work, we still spoke 3 or 4 times a week. Sometimes for 10 minutes. Sometimes for an hour. There was no schedule. There didn't need to be. Then, when Tessa was 28, everything seemed to fall apart for her at once. The marketing company where she'd worked for nearly 5 years eliminated her position during a restructuring. 2 months later, her engagement ended. I won't pretend I knew every detail of that relationship. Tessa was an adult, and I'd learned long ago that loving an adult child meant knowing when not to push. But I knew she was hurting. One Saturday morning I called her. No answer. I left a message. "Hey kiddo. Just checking in. Call whenever you feel like it." She didn't. The next day, I tried again. Nothing. That wasn't normal. I mentioned it to Elise while we were cleaning up after dinner. "She needs space," she said immediately. "Did she tell you that?" Elise hesitated for only half a second. "Yes." I looked at her. "When?" "This afternoon." We talked for a while. I felt relieved. At least Tessa was talking to someone. "What did she say?" Elise dried her hands and gave me a tired look. "Grant, don't make me repeat everything she tells me privately. I wasn't asking for everything. She feels overwhelmed. That's all." I nodded. If Tessa needed space, I could give it to her. I just didn't understand why she couldn't tell me herself. A week passed. Then 2. I sent Tessa one text. "Thinking about you. No need to respond. I'm here." Nothing came back. A few days later, I asked Elise whether she'd heard from her. "Yes." "How is she?" "Better." "Did she mention me?" Elise's expression changed. "Not dramatically. Just enough." "She thinks you're putting pressure on her." I frowned. "I sent one message." "I know." "Then what pressure?" "She knows you're waiting for her to call." I almost laughed because it sounded ridiculous. But Elise didn't. "She feels guilty, Grant. Every time you reach out, she feels like she's disappointing you again." That hit me. The last thing I wanted was to become another burden in Tessa's life. So I backed away. Days turned into weeks. Then something strange happened. Elise began giving me small updates about Tessa almost every day. Tessa had gone to an interview. Tessa was looking at a smaller apartment. Tessa had lunch with an old college friend. Tessa was sleeping better. Every update came through Elise. At first, I was grateful. Then I started wondering why my daughter could tell her mother all those things but couldn't send me 3 words. I'm doing okay. One evening I finally said it. Did I do something? Elise looked up from her laptop. What do you mean? To Tessa. No. Then why won't she speak to me? She associates you with expectations. I stared at her. What expectations? Elise sighed. You've always been proud of her. Maybe too proud. How can I be too proud? When someone is struggling, being around the person who believed they would always succeed can make them feel worse. I didn't completely understand. But it sounded possible. So I believed my wife. That became my first mistake. Not trusting her. Believing I had no reason to verify what she was telling me. Tessa's 29th birthday came 4 months into the silence. I spent 20 minutes choosing a card even though I knew she probably wouldn't care which one I picked. I mailed it with a short note. No questions. No expectations. Just love. Happy birthday, Tess. On the morning of her birthday, I called once. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave another message. That evening, Elise came home carrying her purse and a small bakery box. You saw her? I asked. She stopped. Just for a few minutes. You didn't tell me you were going. I didn't know until she asked. I tried not to sound hurt. How is she? She had a decent day. Did she get my card? Elise looked away while setting the box down. Yes. What did she say? Grant. What? She thought it was better if I didn't tell you. That sentence made my chest tighten. Tell me what? She said the card felt confusing. Confusing? Because you've been angry with her. I stared at Elise. I haven't spoken to her in 4 months. I know. So how could I have been angry with her? Elise looked uncomfortable. She said some of your messages came across that way. What messages? For the first time, my wife didn't answer quickly. Then she shook her head. Maybe she's talking about before she stopped answering. I reached for my phone. I'll ask her. Elise immediately put a hand on my arm. Don't. I looked down at her hand. Why? Because she specifically told me she doesn't want confrontation. I'm not confronting her. To her, it might feel like you are. I lowered my phone. And once again, I trusted Elise's interpretation of what my daughter needed more than my own instinct telling me something didn't fit. Around that same period, another issue began quietly weaving itself into everything. Money. Years earlier, I'd set aside savings for Tessa. Not a fortune. But enough that if she ever faced a serious setback, she wouldn't have to destroy her future trying to survive the present. Elise knew about it. We both did. One evening, she came into my office holding a piece of paper. Tessa's struggling more than she's admitting. I turned toward her. How badly? She may fall behind on rent. Why didn't you tell me? Because she doesn't want you knowing. That hurt. But I focused on the problem. How much does she need? About 4,000. I didn't hesitate. Take it from the savings account. Elise nodded. She doesn't want it coming directly from you. Why? Pride. I thought about it. Fine. Tell her it's from both of us. I will. 2 months later, Elise told me Tessa needed another 6,000 to handle expenses while searching for stable work. Again I agreed. Then there was another request. And another. By the time nearly a year had passed, I'd authorized more than $30,000 in transfers that I believed were helping my daughter get back on her feet. I never once asked Tessa about the money. Because Elise told me that asking would humiliate her. What I didn't know was that Tessa had never received $1. There is a strange kind of grief that comes when someone is still alive but no longer part of your ordinary day. You don't get a single moment where everything changes. You get hundreds of small moments. You see something they would find funny and don't send it. You hear their favorite song while driving and wonder whether they still listen to it. You pass their exit on the highway. You notice their coffee mug at the back of a cabinet. Eventually, silence becomes part of the house. Nearly 11 months after Tessa stopped talking to me, I had almost convinced myself that this was simply our new relationship. Then, on a Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. Her name appeared on the screen. I answered so quickly I nearly dropped it. "Tess?" There was silence. Then she said, "Are you home?" "Yes. I need to talk to you. Come over." Another pause. "Is Mom there?" "No. She's out. I'll be there in 30 minutes. She disconnected. I stood in the kitchen staring at the phone. I wanted to call Elise. Something stopped me. 37 minutes later, Tessa's car pulled into the driveway. When she walked through the front door, I barely recognized the expression on her face. She wasn't just hurt. She was guarded. Like she had come prepared to protect herself from me. I wanted to hug her. I didn't. "Hi," I said. "Hi." She stayed near the door. "You want coffee?" "No." "Water?" "No." Then she looked directly at me. "I just want to know why." I swallowed. "Why what?" Her eyes hardened. "Why you hated me when I needed you most." I thought I had misheard her. "I never hated you." Tessa gave a short, bitter laugh. "Can we not do that?" "Do what?" "Pretend." "I don't know what you're talking about." She pulled out her phone. "I kept them." "Kept what?" "The messages." She tapped her screen several times. Then she handed me the phone. At the top was a messaging account displaying my photograph. The profile name said, Dad Grant Holloway. Underneath was a conversation. The first message from me had been sent 3 weeks after Tessa lost her job. "Your mother told me you're still sitting around feeling sorry for yourself. At some point you need to act like an adult." I read it twice. Then a third time. "I didn't send this." Tessa's face tightened. "Dad? I didn't." She took the phone back and scrolled. Another message. "I'm tired of hearing about your problems every week. Everyone has problems. We don't all make them the center of the family." My hands went cold. "Tessa, I have never seen these." She kept scrolling. The next one had been sent shortly after her engagement ended. "Maybe if you stopped expecting everyone to fix things for you, people wouldn't keep leaving." I felt physically sick. I looked at my daughter. "You believed I wrote that?" Her eyes filled. "It came from you." "No. It had your picture. Your name. You mentioned things only family knew. I didn't send them." She stared at me. For the first time, I saw uncertainty replace anger. Then she said something that changed everything. "Mom said you were too ashamed to admit how angry you were." I pulled out a chair. "Sit down." Tessa didn't move. "Please." Eventually, she sat across from me. "When did Mom tell you that?" "After the first few messages." "And you showed them to her?" "Of course." "What did she say?" Tessa looked confused by the question. "She said you'd been frustrated for months." I shook my head slowly. "No. She said you were tired of financially supporting me." I froze. "Financially supporting you?" "Yes." My voice dropped. "What money?" Tessa stared at me. "What do you mean?" "I've been sending money." Her eyebrows pulled together. "To who?" "To you." "You haven't sent me anything." "Yes, I have." "No, Dad." "Tessa, I've authorized more than $30,000 this year because your mother said you needed help." All the color disappeared from her face. "I never asked her for money." The kitchen became completely silent. I could hear the refrigerator humming behind me. I said, "She told me you were having trouble paying rent." "I was." "So why didn't you ask?" "Because Mom said you refused." My heart began pounding. "What?" Tessa swallowed. "She told me she asked you whether you would help, and you said I'd already wasted enough of your money." I stood up so quickly the chair scraped the floor. "That never happened." Tessa stood too. "Then where did $30,000 go?" Neither of us answered. Because suddenly we understood something at exactly the same time. For almost a year, Elise hadn't simply been standing between us. She had been telling each of us a different story, and she had made sure either of us compared them. Tessa and I spent the next hour examining the messages. There were dozens. Not every message was cruel. That was what made them convincing. Some sounded almost normal. Hope the interview went well. Your mother said you're moving? Be careful with the deposit. Then, buried between them, would come something designed to wound her. Don't call me only when something goes wrong. Or, maybe distance is better for both of us right now. Whoever created the account understood something important. If every message had been cruel, Tessa might have become suspicious. Instead, the messages imitated a relationship slowly falling apart. Then I noticed something. A phrase. One message said, "You can't keep asking people to carry weight you refuse to carry yourself." I stared at it. What? Tessa asked. Your mother says that. Tessa looked back at the screen. She does. All the time. Another message ended with, I don't have the energy for another circular conversation. I felt a chill. That was Elise's phrase too. Not mine. I asked Tessa how the account first contacted her. She searched through the conversation. It started after I changed phone carriers. Mom told me you'd created a new messaging profile because you weren't receiving some of my texts. I closed my eyes. There it was. The explanation had been planted before the first fake message ever arrived. This hadn't happened impulsively. It had been prepared. Tessa sat back. Why would Mom do this? I didn't have an answer. Maybe she's hiding the money. But why destroy us? That was the question that hurt most. $30,000 was serious. But stealing money didn't require nearly a year of emotional manipulation. There had to be another reason. Something she feared Tessa and I would discover if we remained close. I asked, what was happening right before you stopped talking to me? My job ended. Before that, my engagement was falling apart. Anything involving your mother? Tessa thought. Then her expression changed. There was something. What? When I was packing my apartment after the engagement ended, Mom came over to help. I waited. She brought one of those old storage boxes from your house. She said it had some of my childhood documents. What documents? School records. Old insurance stuff. Things like that. I knew the box she meant. It had been stored in the closet in my office for years. Tessa continued. There was a bank statement inside. What kind? I don't know. It had my name on it. I felt my pulse quicken. Your name? Yeah. It looked old. Maybe from when I was a teenager. What did your mother do? She grabbed it and said it shouldn't have been in there. Then Tessa paused. She looked scared. I knew exactly what Tessa had seen. When she was 12, I had opened a custodial investment account for her. Every year I added money. Birthday gifts from grandparents went into it. Small bonuses from work went into it. By the time Tessa finished college, there was a substantial amount left because scholarships had covered much of her tuition. I had always considered the money hers. Not legally forever, but morally. It was supposed to help her start her adult life. A home. Graduate school. A business. Something meaningful. Years earlier, Elise had suggested moving the remaining balance into another family investment account to simplify our finances. I agreed. At least I thought I had. I walked straight to my office and opened the file cabinet. Tessa followed. I searched through folders until I found statements from nearly a decade earlier. Then I found the last statement before the account had supposedly been consolidated. Balance: $118,460. Tessa stared at the number. I never knew there was that much. You weren't supposed to worry about it. I planned to tell you when you were ready to use it. What happened to it? I thought it was transferred. To where? I started searching. There should have been paperwork. Account closures. Transfer records. Something. There was nothing. Then I remembered. Elise handled it. Tessa leaned against the desk. Dad? I didn't respond. Because $30,000 was no longer the question. Now we were looking at money that had been accumulating since our daughter was 12 years old. Tessa opened her phone. There's something else. She found a message from her mother. It had been sent approximately 10 months earlier. Tessa read it aloud. Dad thinks that because he saved money for you when you were younger, you've become too dependent on the idea that he'll always rescue you. I stared at her. I never said that. I know that now. She scrolled. Another message from Elise. He loves you, but sometimes love becomes resentment when one person feels used. I felt something inside me collapse. Those weren't just lies. They were explanations for the cruelty. Elise had created fake messages in my name, then used her real identity to help Tessa interpret them. She had been both the attacker and the comforter. Then I remembered conversations from the previous year. Every time I asked why Tessa wouldn't talk to me, Elise had done the same thing in reverse. She feels judged by you. She thinks you're disappointed in her. She needs distance. She'll come back when she's ready. Elise had positioned herself as translator between two people who had never needed one. And once she became our only source of information about each other, she could control both stories. Part 12. Following the money. I logged into the account I'd used for the transfers Elise said were going to Tessa. The withdrawals were there. $4,000. $6,000. $3,500. $7,200. More. Each transfer went to the same external account. The account name displayed only initials. EH Holdings. My stomach dropped. Elise Holloway? Tessa whispered. Maybe. I searched our records. Nothing. I had never heard of EH Holdings. Then Tessa said, Search Mom's email. I looked at her. I don't have access. She left her old tablet here, didn't she? I remembered the tablet in the guest room drawer. Elise had stopped using it months earlier after buying a new one. I retrieved it. The device still opened without a passcode. Her email account was logged in. I hesitated. For 28 years, I'd believed privacy mattered inside a marriage. But privacy and deception were not the same thing. I searched EH Holdings. 3 results appeared. One was an account registration. The second was a transfer confirmation. The third made my throat tighten. It was an email to a man named Warren Vale. I didn't know the name. The message was short. I can keep covering the payments for now, but Grant is starting to ask questions about Tessa. If those two start talking normally again, everything becomes harder to explain. I read it twice. Then handed the tablet to Tessa. Her face went completely still. Now we knew. Separating us had never been collateral damage. It had been part of the plan. We searched the email account for Warren's name. There were dozens of messages. Most went back almost 4 years. It didn't take long to understand who he was. Warren was Elise's older cousin. I had met him twice years earlier but barely remembered him. Apparently, he'd started a property management company and gotten into financial trouble. Elise had begun sending him money. Small amounts at first. Then larger ones. She had told him she was using her personal savings. She wasn't. The money had come from several places. Our joint savings. The funds I believed were helping Tessa. And years earlier, the account originally created for our daughter. Tessa sat beside me reading silently. Then she stopped. Dad. She pointed to an email from 3 years earlier. Warren had written. Are you sure Grant won't notice the account was closed? Elise replied. He thinks everything was consolidated. As long as Tessa doesn't ask about the old statements, there's no reason for either of them to look closely. I felt sick. 3 years earlier. This had started 3 years before Tessa stopped speaking to me. Then another email made the timeline clear. Months before the fake messages began, Tessa had accidentally discovered that old statement. She had mentioned it to Elise. Elise panicked. Because if Tessa asked me what happened to the account, I would say I thought the money still existed. And if I asked Tessa whether she'd ever received it, she would say no. One conversation could have exposed everything. So Elise made sure that conversation never happened. Tessa kept scrolling through the fake account. Suddenly, she stopped. Her breathing changed. What is it? She turned the phone toward herself. There's one I never showed anyone. You don't have to. No. Her voice shook. You need to see it. She handed me the phone. The message had been sent the night Tessa's engagement officially ended. Your mother told me what happened. I know you're hurting, but maybe this is the point where you ask yourself why your life keeps becoming unstable. At some point, the common denominator is you. I couldn't speak. Tessa looked away. I read that sitting on my bedroom floor. I felt tears burning behind my eyes. I didn't write it. I know. No, Tess. I need you to understand. I would never. I know now. Her voice cracked. For 11 months I didn't. That sentence destroyed me. Not because she blamed me. Because I suddenly understood what had actually been stolen. I had missed nearly a year of my daughter's life. But Tessa had lost something different. During one of the hardest moments she'd ever experienced, she believed her father had looked at her pain and decided she deserved it. Elise hadn't simply taken time from us. She had changed the meaning of memories that already existed. Every time Tessa remembered that night, my face had been attached to words I never wrote. We heard the garage door at 6:17 that evening. Tessa and I looked at each other. Neither of us had discussed what we would say. The door opened. Elise walked in carrying 2 grocery bags. She saw Tessa first. Her face changed immediately. Tessa. Then she saw me holding the tablet. The bags slowly lowered onto the counter. Nobody spoke. I asked one question. Who is Warren Vale? Elise closed her eyes. That was enough. No confusion. No denial. She knew exactly why I was asking. Tessa stood. Mom, did you send those messages? Elise looked at her. What messages? The ones from Dad. Tessa. Did you create the account? Elise placed both hands on the counter. I can explain. My daughter laughed once. It was a broken sound. Then it's true. Elise turned to me. Grant, please don't turn this into something it wasn't. I stared at her. Something it wasn't? I was trying to keep the family from exploding. You impersonated me. Because I needed time. For what? To fix things. I pointed toward the tablet. You had years. She looked away. Then Tessa asked the question neither of us had yet said aloud. Where is my money? Elise sat down. I stayed standing. Tessa stood near the window. For the first time in nearly 3 decades of marriage, my wife looked like someone I didn't know. It started with 15,000, she said. I didn't respond. Warren's company was about to fail. He had employees depending on him. So you took Tessa's money? I borrowed it. Tessa turned. Without telling me. You were 24. It had my name on it. Elise's voice rose. It wasn't technically yours anymore after the account changed. I felt anger surge through me. Don't hide behind technical language. She looked at me. I planned to replace every dollar. With what? When Warren recovered. And did he? Silence. I already knew the answer. Elise continued. He needed more. Then there were fees, debts, penalties. Every time I thought we were close to fixing it, something else happened. So you kept taking money? Yes. How much? She didn't answer. How much, Elise? Her voice became barely audible. About 96,000 from the original funds. Tessa closed her eyes. And the 30,000 Dad thought he was sending me? Elise looked at her. That went toward keeping Warren's company from collapsing. Tessa nodded slowly. Then she asked, So while I was selling furniture to make rent, you were telling Dad I was receiving thousands of dollars? Elise's face crumpled. I was trying to protect everyone. Tessa stared at her. From what? The consequences. Tessa's answer came immediately. No. You were protecting yourself from the consequences. I still needed one answer. Why did you make the messages cruel? Elise looked at me. If all you needed was distance between us, you could have told Tessa I was busy. You could have told me she wanted space. Why make her hate me? I didn't want her to hate you. You told her she was the reason people left. Elise flinched. I was scared. That doesn't answer me. She looked toward Tessa. You kept trying to call him. Tessa's expression changed. What? In the beginning. You weren't actually staying away. Tessa nodded slowly. I called Dad several times. I looked at her. When? The first month. I never got those calls. Elise admitted she'd blocked Tessa's number on my phone temporarily, then removed the block later so I wouldn't notice. But Tessa kept trying. So Elise needed something stronger than silence. She needed Tessa to stop wanting to talk to me. That was why the fake account changed. The early messages were distant. Then they became irritated. Then cruel. Elise watched which messages made Tessa withdraw. And when Tessa became hurt enough to stop reaching out, Elise stopped needing to block anything. She had turned emotional pain into a security system around her secret. Elise began crying. I wasn't thinking clearly. I shook my head. No. She looked at me. You were thinking very clearly. Grant. You created an account. You used my picture. You learned how I phrased things. You controlled what each of us knew. You blocked calls. You moved money. You wrote messages designed to make her stop trusting me. She covered her face. I continued. You knew exactly where to hurt her because you're her mother. Stop. And you knew exactly how to make me back away because you're my wife. Please. You didn't lose control, Elise. You used everything you knew about us. That was the realization I couldn't escape. A stranger couldn't have done what she did. A stranger wouldn't know that telling me Tessa felt pressured would make me stop calling. A stranger wouldn't know Tessa feared disappointing me. A stranger wouldn't know which words would sound enough like me to be believable. Elise succeeded because she knew us intimately. She had turned trust itself into the weapon. Tessa had been silent for several minutes. Then she stepped closer to her mother. I need to ask you something. Elise looked up. If Dad and I hadn't found out today, when were you going to tell us? Elise didn't answer. Next month? Silence. Next year? Nothing. When Warren paid everything back. Elise wiped her face. That was the plan. Tessa nodded. And if he never did? Elise looked down. Tessa's voice softened. Were you going to let me spend the rest of Dad's life thinking he abandoned me? That question changed the room. Elise opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Tessa continued. You watched me cry over those messages. I know. You sat beside me. I know. You told me I deserved better. Elise started crying harder. Tessa's face went blank. You were comforting me for something you were doing to me. I looked away. There are sentences that expose a betrayal more clearly than any evidence ever could. That was one of them. Elise stayed with her sister that night. I didn't ask her to. I didn't stop her either. After she left, Tessa and I sat in the living room until after midnight. For the first time in almost a year, we simply talked. Not about Elise. About us. Tessa told me about losing her job. Her breakup. The interview she almost skipped because she couldn't get out of bed that morning. The temporary contract position she'd taken. The apartment she'd moved into. The used dining table she'd bought for $40. I listened to stories I should already have known. Then she asked about my year. And I realized she had missed mine too. The shoulder injury I'd gotten while repairing the fence. The promotion I had turned down. The afternoon I drove past her apartment, and nearly stopped before remembering Elise's warning that I would only make things worse. We had both lived almost an entire year. We had simply lived it without each other. Money could be traced. Accounts could be investigated. Legal paperwork could be corrected. But there was no account where those missing conversations had been stored. No place we could withdraw them from later. Before Tessa left that night, she stood near the door. "Dad?" "Yeah? I need to tell you something embarrassing." "Okay. There were times I hated you." I nodded. "I understand." "No. I mean really hated you." She looked ashamed. "I would remember being little and sitting beside you while you taught me how to drive in that empty parking lot. Or how you stayed up helping me finish that ridiculous science project." She smiled faintly. "And then I'd think maybe none of it meant what I thought it meant. That hurt more than I expected." She continued. "I started rewriting everything." "What do you mean?" "I thought maybe you had always been disappointed in me and I just didn't notice when I was younger." I swallowed. "Tess. I know now." She stepped forward and hugged me. It was awkward for the first second. Then it wasn't. I held my daughter and realized Elise's greatest theft hadn't been the money or even the missing year. She had almost taken Tessa's childhood from me too. Not the events. Their meaning. Over the next several weeks, I hired an attorney and a forensic accountant. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I needed facts. The numbers were worse than Elise had admitted. She had moved money through several accounts over nearly 4 years. Some transfers went to Warren. Others covered earlier transfers. Money was moved from one place to hide a shortage in another. There were signatures attached to 2 documents that looked like mine. They weren't. That discovery ended whatever small possibility remained that this could be explained as one terrible mistake. Mistakes don't require forged signatures. Mistakes don't require fake identities. Mistakes don't require 4 years of planning. Elise asked to meet me twice. The first time, I refused. The second time, I agreed. We met in the same house where we'd raised Tessa. Elise looked exhausted. "I know you may never forgive me," she said. I didn't respond. "But I need you to understand that I never wanted to lose either of you." I looked at her. "You were willing to make us lose each other." Her eyes dropped. "That isn't the same thing." "It is to me." Elise asked whether our marriage was over. I told her I didn't know what label to put on it yet. But I knew the marriage I believed I had was gone. She nodded. Then she said something I still think about. "I thought if I could just keep everything separated long enough, I could put it all back the way it was." I asked. "How?" She didn't understand. "How were you going to give Tessa back the year she thought I despised her?" I would have explained. "How were you going to explain the messages?" "I don't know." "How were you going to explain why I wasn't there when she needed me?" She started crying again. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt tired. She had spent years borrowing against the future. Not just financially. Emotionally. She kept telling herself she could repair things later. Replace the money later. Tell the truth later. Reconnect us later. But some debts grow while you're avoiding them. By the time the truth arrived, the interest wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in trust. A few months later, Tessa came over for dinner. Our relationship wasn't magically normal. We were rebuilding it. Slowly. Some weeks we talked every day. Other weeks, one of us became quiet. Sometimes she'd read an old fake message and feel angry all over again. Sometimes I'd find myself wondering whether a memory from that year had been shaped by something Elise told me. Healing wasn't a straight line. After dinner, Tessa opened her phone. I saved something. My stomach tightened. What? She showed me a screenshot. It was one of the fake messages. The cruelest one. The message telling her that she was the common denominator in everything going wrong. Why keep that? I asked. She looked at it for a long moment. Because one day I want to be able to read it and feel nothing. I nodded. Then she deleted it. She looked surprised at herself. So much for one day. I smiled. For the first time, she smiled too. People often think betrayal is about the moment you discover the truth. It isn't. The discovery is only when the damage becomes visible. The betrayal itself may have been happening quietly for years. Elise didn't wake up one morning and destroy our family. She made dozens of smaller choices. Move the money. Hide the statement. Tell one lie. Cover it with another. Keep Tessa from calling me. Keep me from calling Tessa. Create the account. Send one message. Then another. Then one cruel enough to make a daughter stop reaching for her father. Every choice made the next choice easier. Until eventually, my wife was sitting beside our daughter, comforting her over words my wife herself had written in my name. That's the part one still struggled to understand. Not how someone lies. How someone lives inside the lie long enough that protecting it becomes more important than protecting the people around them. Almost a year after Tessa walked into my kitchen and showed me the fake account, she sent me a message one morning. Just 3 lines. Morning, Dad. Big presentation today. Tell me I'll be fine. I stared at the screen longer than necessary. Then I typed. You'll be nervous. You'll do it anyway. And you'll be fine. 3 dots appeared. Then her reply came. That's the dad I remember. I sat there holding the phone. For months, I had believed the hardest part of this story would be accepting what my wife had done. It wasn't. The hardest part was realizing how close I came to losing my daughter without ever knowing why. Elise didn't simply lie about money. She didn't simply impersonate me. She tried to become the author of our relationship. She chose which words Tessa believed came from me. She chose which parts of Tessa's life I was allowed to know. She chose when we could miss each other. When we could resent each other. When we could feel guilty. For almost a year, she controlled the distance between us. But she made one mistake. She believed that enough false memories could permanently replace real ones. They couldn't. Because underneath the anger, underneath the fake messages, underneath almost a year of silence, my daughter still remembered who I had been before someone told her to remember me differently. And I still remembered her. That was what brought us back. Not money. Not evidence. Not explanations. Memory. The real kind. The kind nobody else gets to rewrite. I lost money that year. I lost a marriage I thought I understood. I lost months with my daughter that I will never get back. But the worst thing I nearly lost was something I never knew could be stolen. My place inside my daughter's memory. Because when someone lies about what you said, they aren't only changing the present. If the lie lasts long enough, they can begin changing the past too. And sometimes the deepest betrayal isn't discovering that someone deceived you. It's discovering that while you were trusting them, they were quietly teaching someone you love to stop trusting you.